The countdown is on. T-minus 3 days until Trump's tariffs. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
The answers you need
from the people in the know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
I'm David Smith, in for Rob Snow today, and the countdown is on. We may be just days away from a trade war with the United States. We're waiting to see what happens this weekend. Saturday is the day that President Trump has said he'll introduce those 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods sold to the U.S. Trump's new White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, confirmed to reporters yesterday, February 1st is the date.
Can you give us an update on the president's plans for his tariff agenda? He spoke a lot about this yesterday, and there's a couple of dates coming up that he's spoken to. Number one, February 1st, he's alluded to both the potential for tariffs for Canada and Mexico, but also China to take effect on those days. What's he thinking about that? Yeah. Should those countries expect that?
Again, he was asked and answered this question this past weekend when he took a lot of questions from the press, and he said that the February 1st date for Canada and Mexico still holds.
So Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister is Melanie Joly. She is in Washington, D.C. today for a closed-door meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Melanie Joly is now on her fifth trip to Washington since the U.S. election. Joly told reporters in Ottawa on Monday that she still does believe there's a way to avoid these tariffs altogether.
When it comes to preventing tariffs, this is our number one priority, and we're working at it every day. Now, we believe that diplomacy can work, and that's why we're having private conversations, and we won't negotiate in front of the public.
Again, it's Wednesday today. Tariffs are supposed to start on Saturday, but she believes there's still a path to avoid them. That's the official government line, anyway. One person who doesn't seem convinced that there's a way to avoid tariffs is Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Ford is so convinced tariffs are coming that he has called a snap election here in Ontario because he says he needs a new 4-year mandate from the people to deal with whatever economic damage may be coming.
Well, what I'll tell the people of Ontario, we're going to see an unprecedented attack to our families, to our businesses, to our communities, something that we've never seen in the history of the country, getting economically attacked by the largest country in the world, the most powerful person in the world when it comes to President Trump. And we're going to be there for him. We're going to support the people. We're going to protect the people, protect their jobs, protect communities, protect businesses, just like we did during the pandemic, but this is going to be more of an impact.
He's not sounding so optimistic that there's still a way to avoid these tariffs. And if you want my opinion, I agree with him. There's been no evidence this week that we won't see tariffs coming Saturday. We can only work from the information that we have. But the only person who knows for sure is Donald Trump. So it's a holding pattern for now on the tariff file, and we'll keep you up to date on that story as we make our way through the day. In Canadian politics, there's a new conflict between opposition parties over whether to bring down the Liberal government when the House of Commons returns in March. That question seemed to have been settled last month when NDP leader Jagmeet Singh committed to voting non-confidence in the Trudeau government at the earliest opportunity to trigger a spring federal election. But now he's singing a bit of a different tune. As you heard yesterday, the government has quietly been working on a pandemic-style relief program for Canadians who might lose their jobs if there's a trade war with the U.S. And Jagmeet Singh was asked directly about that at a press conference yesterday.
If Trump follows through on his plan with tariffs, would you keep the Liberals in power and allow for the passage of a work relief program before supporting a non-confidence motion?
I'll just start off by the fact that I've spoken with a lot of workers who are deeply worried about what the Trump tariffs might mean. They say, sometimes I lay awake at night saying, if that tariff goes through, do I lose my job? And what's going to happen to my kids? What's going to happen to my family? And when we think about the analysis that's out there, if those Trump tariffs come in place, there are hundreds and thousands of Canadian jobs at risk. Think about what that means for those workers, hundreds of thousands of workers, for their families, for those communities. This could be devastating for our country. So we do need to have a plan in place to support those that are impacted, those businesses, those workers, most importantly. I have not had any conversations with other opposition leaders. I think we need to come together to have a discussion about what is the best way forward. I've not had any discussions with the government related to this. If there is any desire to move forward, the government should call us together, like we did during COVID, and discuss a plan that supports workers.
So again, the question was, would you keep the Liberals in power to allow the passage of a relief program? And what you did not hear in Jagmeet Singh's answer was the word no. He's not saying no. He's leaving the door open. Based on what he said in that clip, it's entirely possible that when the House of Commons returns on March 24th, the NDP may again vote to prop up the Liberal government. A reporter put that same question to the Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet. Here's what he said.
There's talk today of the government presenting a bailout package for people affected by tariffs, by American tariffs. Would you support the government in the House of Commons if they were to present such a thing?
I see no way I would support any astuce of the government. I believe that the intention would be to create a context in which the government would get 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they remain there longer than supposed. True hell in terms of parliamentary work. If the Liberals want things to become clear and want to help people, they should simply start the election sooner.
So that's a hard no, I think. That's a hard pass from the Bloc Québécois leader. That's what a leader who's ready to fight an election sounds like. So that's very interesting. More on that as we make our way through the show. And in other news, the Bank of Canada has cut its key interest rate again. The overnight rate is now down to 3%. That's a 25 basis point cut, which most economists were expecting. However, I am not sure how much relief people will feel from that interest rate cut given the weakened Canadian dollar. The loonie is trading today just slightly higher than 69 cents US. I'm David Smith. A look at the latest federal polling is next with David Coletto from Abacus Data. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Welcome back to the show. I'm David Smith. Rob is off today. Tariffs and elections. Kind of a theme for us today. Tariffs and elections, elections and tariffs. We have brand new election polling to share with you today, federally and for the province of Ontario, where Doug Ford has called a snap election. Hot off the presses from Abacus Data. David Coletto is the CEO of Abacus Data. He happens to be on the line right now. Hello, David.
Hi, David. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you as well. Thanks for taking the time. Let's start with the national numbers, if we can, please. These numbers are interesting because these are post-Liberal leadership race announcements. You were in the field for this poll January 22nd to the 26th, after both Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland had launched their leadership campaigns. So, David, the big question is, are the Liberals getting a boost from the leadership race?
The short answer is yes, but there's a little bit of, I think, debate among pollsters about how big that boost is. We have seen the Conservative vote drop 3 points from the middle of January to 43. The Liberal vote is up 2 points to 22. And the NDP is basically static at around 18. So, not a fundamental change in how people say they would vote today. A few other polls, another one just released today shows a slightly tighter race. There's one or two that show it very, very close, which, I don't see in our numbers. But I think the big picture really is that, yes, I think a confluence of the Prime Minister resigning, a Liberal leadership race starting, and now officially Donald Trump in the White House, I think has created a space where more people, at least right now, are open to considering the Liberal Party again, and that really shows up in a question we ask. Would you be even open or consider voting Liberal? And that number is up 4 points from just 2 weeks ago. So, it's not a competitive horse race right now, but it is one at least in which Liberals can feel somewhat better that their vote is at least going up to some extent.
Okay, that's interesting. So to the extent that it is going up, more people may be open to the Liberal Party than before. Where is that support coming from? Where are the Liberals pulling support from? Are they people who would have said they were undecided before, or people who were going to vote for the Conservatives, NDP? Where are they pulling those voters from?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is coming from two groups. One is that, like as you said, that undecided group who were parking their support there to wait and see whether the Prime Minister was going to quit and to sort of assess kind of the broader landscape. I do think there's also some who were in the Conservative tent and had gone there, particularly over the last number of months, as Chrystia Freeland resigned and the Prime Minister resigned, and it really did seem that the government was just kind of falling apart, and a lot of people who were just unhappy with the Prime Minister. I think some of those people, now that he is not fully exiting, but will exit shortly, has given them, I think, an ability to look past that. And the farther that I think the Prime Minister's in the rearview mirror, the better for the Liberal Party. And so I think a lot of that support is coming home in a way. These were Liberal voters who have just had become frustrated, unhappy, disappointed, dissatisfied. You pick the word, David, with the Liberals, but weren't enamored with Pierre Poilievre, the Conservatives, right? And so they're a number of them, not all of them, are coming back to the Liberal Party right now.
Do you think the ballot question is changing at all for Canadians? Doug Ford has called an election in Ontario centered around Trump's tariff threat. He says he needs a new mandate to deal with Trump. Do you have a sense of whether that line of thinking may influence voters in the next federal election, whenever it might be?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that's the question we should be asking and following for the next number of months, right? Because for the longest time now, I would say for a year and a half, 2 years, the fundamental thing that was driving most Canadians was a desire for change. They wanted to change their political leadership. They wanted to change what they thought were public policies that were causing them frustrations and harm, and they wanted just a change in situation. But I do think the potential chaos that Donald Trump will bring, if he does bring in tariffs, let's say on the weekend, has the chance to change the frame in which people are making a choice. We asked a question on our survey that I'm writing up a release about, that asks people, is the next election more about who's going to bring fundamental change to the country, or who can best protect Canada, as even the Premier announced when he announced he was running. He's calling an election yesterday. He said protect Canadians, right? To protect against the effects of Trump, and it's not overwhelming on the change side on that question. And so I do think that for a large number of Canadians, that choice is becoming murkier. And I think over the next number of months, as the Liberals ultimately pick a leader, and as we figure out what, in fact, Donald Trump does and what effect it's going to have on us, then we're going to get into a debate about what the response should be. And that is a better place, I think, for Liberals to be than if everybody's focused on who do I vote for to get the Liberals out? Yeah, and there's so many unknowns too, right? I mean, we're talking about tariffs as if they're already here. February 1st is the date that's been floated. Nobody really knows except for Donald Trump himself. And by the time a federal election swings around, the earliest it could be would be May, still several months from now. It's possible it could swing back the other way, I guess. Anything's possible. Yeah, and I still think fundamentally, though, the Liberals are in a difficult environment, right? Any government, even when you replace the leader, has a hard time keeping in office beyond 10 years. So no matter who becomes Liberal leader, they face a really daunting task to convince people that they deserve a fourth term in office as a party in government. But I do think that the environment today is very much different than it was a few months ago. Even though we knew after November that Donald Trump was going to become president, and he he made his, what his plans were very, very clear. I think a lot of Canadians hadn't fully digested potentially the effect. And you're right, we don't yet know what he's going to do, but I do think that the certainty around the outcome of next election has lessened, and that means what happens in between is going to be important. David, fundamentally, I think, as somebody who's spent a lot of time asking people questions about politics, that most Canadians who aren't deeply partisan one way or the other look at an election choice as fundamentally coming down to who do I think can best handle the issue I care most about at that moment. And right now, I think there's an increasing number of people who are saying that issue is who can protect me, who can defend against the effects that Donald Trump is going to have on our country.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you for that. And quickly, on the Ontario election, you have new numbers out this morning. How is the race looking for Ontario voters?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a reason Doug Ford called an early election beyond the reasons he says, which is he needs a mandate to put in place policies to react, because the PCs are in a really strong place. We have them 23 points ahead of the Ontario Liberals. We have Doug Ford, for the first time in many years, having more people say they have a positive view of him than a negative one. And his government's approval rating has actually improved substantially over the last month. So him being front and center on both as the chair of the Council of the Federation, rep speaking on behalf of premiers, him, being a defender of Canada's interests, not just Ontario's, I think has improved Mr. Ford's views, and I think the PCs are heavily favored to win and would start this campaign today really in the driver's seat, as strong a position as they were when they called and started the last provincial election in 2022.
Okay, it'll be an interesting race to watch. That's our time for today. David Coletto, thank you so much for joining the show today. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks, David.
That's David Coletto, CEO, Abacus Data. I am David Smith, in for Rob Snow today. Short break now. We're back right after this. This is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now you know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
David Smith here, in for Rob today. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're all doing great out there. Very snowy in the nation's capital today. Lots of traffic chaos here locally where I'm at. Hopefully you're having a better commute or had a better commute this morning than I did. Just before the bottom of the news here, this is an interesting story about the tariff threat. KPMG has polled 250 Canadian business leaders and found 80% want retaliatory tariffs. Businesses are asking Ottawa to create a competitive environment compared to the U.S. with a positive income tax structure. But again, 8 out of 10 of them are prepared to endure what they call short-term pain in order to negotiate a fair deal with the U.S. I was surprised that the number was that high. Retaliatory tariffs, very popular amongst the business community. Coming up right after the news, we have our Newsday panel. Cam Holmstrom and Nick McRoberts will be here. We'll dive into all of the hot political news of the day. Don't go anywhere. That's just ahead. I'm David Smith. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now you know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio. The Newsday panel.
Yes, it is. And it's David Smith here, in for Rob Snow today. On the Newsday panel, we have two of the best political strategists in the business. Cam Holmstrom is here, principal, Nipaway Strategies. Hello, Cam.
Hello, David.
Good to hear from you. And Nick McRoberts as well, vice president with Winston Wilmot. Hello, Nick.
David, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you both for making some time to join our humble radio program. Some really interesting stuff in the mix today. And Cam, I'm glad we have you with us. You are the new Democrat on the panel today. Your leader, Jagmeet Singh, making headlines yesterday when he suggested he may still vote to keep the Liberals in government once the House of Commons returns, if a confidence vote is called on a plan to support Canadians impacted by possible U.S. tariffs. What do you think of that? And is the timing of the federal election back up in the air?
Okay, two thoughts to this.
Okay.
First off, you know what? This is why you don't answer hypothetical questions. Exactly because of this. Because guess what? You know what? We don't know if anything's coming forward. You can't tell me if Saturday these tariffs are coming down, or if it's a week from now, or April 1st, or whatever it is, right? So to me, I'm floored to even answer the question, because you end up with a topic like this, which I think takes things way off of where it needs to be. But secondly, let's look at it this way. If this did happen and people are getting hammered with this, are you trying to tell me it's not the responsible thing to do to make sure people actually have these things in place they need to have right away? Like, what's the alternative at that point? Is say, sorry guys, I'm not going to support you while you're getting hammered by tariffs. You're losing your job. You might lose your home. But you know what? I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you in 2 months after the election, and then we'll take care of you. Like, that's no more responsible, right? But to the first point, that could happen. But you know what? There's so many other things that could happen, and so much is moving so fast, I don't even know why you answer the question. To me, it's irresponsible to answer until you have more firm details in front of you, because that scenario could play out. But the way things are going, a lot of other scenarios could play out too between now and then.
Yeah, so much is still unknown, and we're compounding hypotheticals on top of hypotheticals here. Nick, what do you think of what Cam is having? Cam's take is there a bit of a communications fumble, an own goal by Jagmeet Singh. What do you think about what you heard from him yesterday?
I think that the leader of the NDP has not yet proven that he'll follow up on any of the threats that he's made to end the government thus far. The NDP has continued to bleed support to the Liberal Party on top of some financial challenges that they've been having. There's no good time right now for the NDP to force an election, and I think that this opportunity is helpful for them to be able to prop up a Liberal government while doing it under the guise of supporting Canadians. And that support may be valid and real, but it is nothing more, I think, than convenient timing for the NDP.
Okay. Cam, I think that Mr. Singh comes off looking a little bit hypocritical here. He promised to bring down the government, and now he seems to be going back on that promise.
Oh, sweet Jesus, David, seriously. The fact of the matter is we're dealing with an existential crisis. We're dealing with a president who's being overly aggressive, who's already sent other nations into crisis and is threatening to do the same to us. He wants to annex us. He has said as much. He wants to tax us into oblivion. He has said as much. And he's throwing these threats around like crazy. Guess what? The actions of the leader of the fourth party ain't a hill of beans compared to that. And if you're sitting here trying to tell me that at the end of the day, if basically he's saying, look, yeah, I want to bring down the government, but guess what? If the actual well-being and be able to keep the roofs over the homes for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Canadians would come first, that's just not some fig leaf. That's reality. And again, I put it to you. If you say, to hell with it, I want an election no matter what are you going to leave people hanging till May or June until they actually get some help while they're dealing with all this? I've said this before and I'll say it again. We should not be in this position right now. The reason why we shouldn't be is because Justin Trudeau should have taken the hint way back in June when he lost in St. Paul's, walked away, allowed for all this to happen, and allow us to be ready to deal with the threat right in front of us. Unfortunately, my Wayback Machine is broken, and I don't have a mechanic on hand to fix it. But you know what? The fact of the matter is that the reason why I'm upset with Jagmeet on this is because he answered the question. I'm not going to sit here and say that, you know what, that he shouldn't say, I'm absolutely not going to help people if people are in dire crisis. Again, think of it this way. Imagine if we were in this scenario in March of 2020 when COVID first hit. Would the responsible response then to say, hey, you know what, people? I know you're losing your jobs and everything's shutting down and all that, but, we need an election right now. And you know what? Sorry, I can't help you till then. There would have been a hue and cry amongst everyone about how craven and irresponsible that would be. So you know what? There are no good situations. I'm not worried about the NDP being ready for an election. They're nominating candidates. They got the money in the bank to pay to go to an election. And anyone who knows about the financing for NDP campaigns knows at the end of the day, they're going to be more than fine to get there. I've seen the party do far more on much worse positions than they're in right now. Their debts are paid off. They're ready to go. That's not what this is. What I'm upset with Jagmeet about is that basically he just didn't say, look, there's a lot of road between now and then. We'll see where we are when we're there. Instead, just don't answer the bloody hypothetical. Because Nick is right on this one point. He has to prove it. And every time now that you kind of answer a hypothetical like this, it leads to topics like this where we're wasting 10 minutes talking about this rather than talking about the threat right across the border from us.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough, Kev. Nick, what kind of position does this put an incoming Liberal leader into? Now that we've set this framework for the idea of House of Commons comes back, there's suddenly billions of dollars in new spending on the table. What if the new Liberal leader's Mark Carney? Nobody's ever voted for Mark Carney. Does he really have a mandate to spend billions of dollars?
I think that he has the track record to say that he understands the important nature of those expenditures and the gravity behind it. The position, it seems like this will be Mr. Carney's party to run, and the situation that he is now in is to say, look, we have an existential threat on the border. We have a conservative party who wants to buddy up to Donald Trump, and we have an NDP party who has simply kind of sat there and supported significant policy initiatives, but have also continued with these empty threats. And so the Liberals have a situation here where they can communicate to Canadians that they are the only ones able to take this seriously and battle against Donald Trump right now. None of the other parties are ready to fight against Donald Trump. The Liberals are the one with a proven track record of that. Mark Carney is the one with a proven track record of coming into poor economic situations and leaving countries better than they started. The Bank of Canada today has said we're going to go into a recession if these tariffs come in. And the opportunity for Liberals in the House and to Canadians is to communicate that they're the ones with the experience and the leadership to do that now.
Okay. All right. We have to stop here for our first break. Very interesting. Thank you for the analysis on that story. I find that one fascinating. My sense of it, I'll just add my 2 cents here before we stop. My sense of it is that a broad majority of the voting public is ready for a federal election, had resigned themselves to having a spring federal election. And if by some wonky procedure of Parliament that is suddenly put off, and all of a sudden billions of dollars of more government money are going out the door, I don't think the public's going to respond positively to that. Just my own sense of it. All right, we'll stop here. I'm David Smith, in for Rob Snow today. It's the Newsday panel. Lots still ahead. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
David Smith here, in for Rob Snow today. It's our Newsday panel. Cam Holmstrom is here, Neepaway Strategies, and Nick McRoberts with Winston Wilmot. I want to ask you guys about something I'm going to talk about with the callers later in the show. What's the ballot question for a federal election? What will it be about? Pierre Poilievre maintains this will be the carbon tax election. But is it? If we head to the polls in May, and if at that point we've been suffering with U.S. tariffs for 2 or 3 months, do you think the carbon tax will be front of mind, and what the carbon tax represents in terms of affordability as the major issue? Nick, what do you think?
I think affordability is the disease. I think the carbon tax is kind of something that is symptomatic of that, or something that people are clinging to. And I think as we've seen across the globe, the fix here is just change. It's not whether someone will come in and act one policy or bring one in. Canadians want change right now. And, the clear choice over the last little bit has been the Conservative Party. They have been the party of change. with the Prime Minister not wanting to step down. Now, the Liberal Party are about to put in a new leader, and by all, polls on this, it seems like it's going to be someone of deep, deep change in Mr. Carney. And if Canadians go to a ballot and they can see a clear choice between someone who is aligning themselves with a neighbor to the south who's being critical of Canada and wanting us to become a new state, or if they can align themselves with someone with strong economic background that can bring in policy change in a stable way, I think that's gonna activate a lot of voters. The carbon tax, I think, will be a topic of conversation, but this is about new voices, new faces, and new perspectives for Canadians.
Right. The change theme is still there, but the need for change, what's driving the need for change, may be shifting more towards dealing with Trump. Cam, what do you think about that?
I don't totally disagree with Nick on that. I guess I would frame this a different way. I think it comes back to the order of needs for people, right? At the end of the day, yeah, the change narrative was really coming, especially around anything around pricing of anything. It came back down to that idea of what's it costing me, how am I surviving, how am I getting by, right? Well, what's one of the only things that supersedes that on that list of needs? It's, do I have freedom anymore? Do I have a country anymore, right? Like, that tops it, right? That's one of the few things that could. So I think that depending on, again, this all depends on how much further Mr. Trump goes and how much hairier this gets in the meantime, right? Like, things are moving so fast that it's really hard to say what exactly it's going to look like by the time we get to the polls, whether it be in May, whether in the fall, right? Honestly, so much is going to happen between those periods. But the point is that what's happening down there is shaking a lot of people loose, and it's making a lot of people realize, look, we are in a period of advanced risk that we have not been in many generations. Like, we're talking Second World War basically at this point, and that really pushes people to think differently. And then in that case, I don't think it becomes a matter of change. It becomes a matter of who's best equipped to deal with this, right? Who's best equipped to handle this situation. And I guess that then forces people to look at people very differently. I don't think Mr. Poilievre comes across very good in that light, because he hasn't done much outside of his political life, and even then he hasn't done much in that space. And you can make a case for Mr. Carney for his work in the past and all of that. But the point is that I think all of a sudden the criteria for what people are looking for is going to change, and a lot of it's to come back to just that. How are we going to handle this existential crisis right in front of us?
Okay, who benefits then? If that's the way things are shifting, Nick, which party, which leader would benefit the most? And let me play the role of a partisan conservative here. You say people may be put off by Poilievre. I think the word you used was aligning more with Trump's way of viewing the world. Some people may be attracted to that. Some people may think, if those two guys are cut from the same cloth, Poilievre will be better at dealing with Trump than Mr. Singh or a Mr. Carney or a Miss Freeland. Nick, what do you think?
I think that if that's the argument, then the fight against that is to show that Trump's way of running the world, or wanting the world to be run, is not good for the world and for people's pocketbook. I think what is at play here is about more than the cost of eggs. It's about decency and diplomacy and the way that the world looks at Canada and the U.S. and NATO countries and the strength that they exude. And Trump's going to focus on the Panama Canal and on Greenland and pulling out of all these climate accords, and the list goes on. But if affordability is the issue, then he's not focusing on that, and people aren't getting homes built, and the price of eggs aren't coming down, and gas is still expensive. And so making that case in Canada that if Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are just going to follow that game plan, they're not going to do the things that they want to do. Meanwhile, the Liberal government to date has been the one that has dealt with the Trump presidency. They've been the one that has dealt with a trade crisis. And yes, we are in an affordability crisis. But I would rather have someone dealing with an affordability crisis in Mark Carney with the backing of a party who has already dealt with Donald Trump fairly effectively once,
right,
than someone who has, no real experience at this level of government and has no experience dealing with President Trump.
Okay. All right. I hate to cut you off, and Cam, I'll let you get in on that. We just have to stop for our last break here. Okay. Newsday panel. I'm David Smith. This is News Radio. We'll be back right after this.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
David Smith here in for Rob Snow today. Just 2 minutes left with our panelists here. Sorry about that. Bad clock management on my part. But Cam, please pick up where we left off in the previous segment. The focus on dealing with Trump in the next federal election, bad for Pierre Poilievre? What do you think?
I think it's bad for Pierre Poilievre, but I don't think it's all roses for the Liberals either. It could be good for Mark Carney individually, but let's be real here. The Liberals can talk about their experience of dealing with Trump. That was Trump the first time around. This is a very different beast. And let's be real here, too. The fact is, we've known for months that the odds of Donald Trump winning that election were at least 50-50. And when it happened, the government was caught flat-footed. They were not ready. They did not have a plan in place. And they spent weeks trying to put it all together while all this stuff was happening. So we started from behind because the Liberal government did not have us ready. So to my mind, you don't get to kind of throw that out there and say, oh, we really have this amazing record when it's not that great. I'd also point out, too, for all the things they've done for affordability for the last couple of years, none of them came of their own volition. They hadn't planned on doing any of them. The NDP had to force them to do it. So don't sit here and tell me now that the Liberals have given the full ride again. We'll just do this stuff on their own out of the goodness of their heart. But that being said, if you have to look at who's in a better position, I would say Mr. Carney would be, because for Mr. Poilievre, if I have a comparison, his approach is essentially appeasement. And guess what? Donald Trump's policy is America first. And that does not mean that we somehow get included in that in a positive way. To me, his approach is more like Neville Chamberlain's approach, hoping to sue for peace in our time. We all know how that turned out in the end. And I'm not saying that he's that, but I think it's the same approach. I don't think it's going to work. You have to be able to have a backbone and stand up to him. I don't know if Mark Carney is exactly that person, but I'd have more confidence in him being that than Mr. Poilievre.
Okay. All right. We have to cut it off there. Sorry about that, Nick, but thank you very much, both of you, for your time today. Really great discussion. Nick McRoberts, thank you.
Thank you, David.
And Cam, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cam Holmstrom, Neapaway Strategies, Nick McRoberts, Winston Wilmot. I am David Smith. After the news, it's Talk Back. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Elections. We're going to talk about elections today. David Smith here, sitting in for Rob Snow. Welcome to Talk Back. Phone lines open now, 1-833-668-2577. We have 2 hours to take your calls, discuss the important issues of the day, and elections, and tariffs and Donald Trump and tariffs and elections and tariffs and Trump. All of these issues are interconnected. All of today's important issues are all connected back to elections and to Donald Trump and to tariffs. We've got a provincial election now happening here in the province of Ontario. 16 million Canadians living in this province will head to the polls in about a month from now to vote on a new provincial election. Doug Ford is calling this snap election because he says he needs a new mandate. A mandate to fight Donald Trump. The opposition parties say that's baloney. Ford is just doing it to secure another majority government while he's riding high in the polls. Taking advantage of a crisis, you could say. Meanwhile, in Ottawa, the wind seems to be blowing in a different direction. Up until yesterday, I was sure that we would have a spring federal election. I was certain until yesterday. I was certain that when the House of Commons returns on March 24th, there would be a confidence vote and the opposition parties would bring down the Trudeau government and send all 41 million Canadians to the polls. That may no longer be the case. Because yesterday, The leader of the New Democrats, Jagmeet Singh, would not rule out voting to keep the Liberals in power if the government tables some kind of spending package to support Canadians who may be impacted by a trade war with the U.S. He didn't say no. Jagmeet Singh did not say no when he was asked if he would keep the Liberals in power to pass a pandemic-style support program. Here's the clip.
If Trump follows through on his plan with tariffs, would you keep the Liberals in power and allow for the passage of a work relief program before supporting a non-confidence motion?
I'll just start off by the fact that I've spoken with a lot of workers who are deeply worried about what the Trump tariffs might mean. They say, sometimes I lay awake at night saying, if that tariff goes through, do I lose my job? And what's going to happen to my kids? What's going to happen to my family? And when we think about the analysis that's out there, if those Trump tariffs come in place, there are hundreds and thousands of Canadian jobs at risk. Think about what that means for those workers, hundreds of thousands of workers, for their families, for those communities. This could be devastating for our country. So we do need to have a plan in place to support those that are impacted, those businesses, those workers, most importantly. I have not had any conversations with other opposition leaders. I think we need to come together to have a discussion about what is the best way forward. I've not had any discussions with the government related to this. If there is any desire to move forward, the government should call us together, like we did during COVID, and discuss a plan that supports workers.
What you did not hear in that word salad of an answer was the word no. He didn't say no. He didn't say, no, I will not continue to support the Liberal government regardless of what they put on the table. He did not say no. So he's open to it. What do you think of that? 1-833-668-2577. I have to admit I did not see that one coming. I didn't see that one coming. Maybe I was naive not to have seen that one coming. The federal NDP leader signed a letter not just over a month ago saying, I will bring down this government at the earliest opportunity. Now he says he's open to continue supporting them. I do find it kind of ironic that on the one hand, you've got the Premier of Ontario calling a snap election because he says he can't govern with his current mandate given the new circumstances brought about by Trump's tariff threat. On the other hand, you have the leader of the federal NDP suggesting now is not the time for an election, given the new circumstances brought about by Trump's tariff threat. In Jagmeet Singh's worldview, the possible economic damage of those tariffs is so serious that it would be worth delaying a federal election so that the current government could pass new spending. Deal with tariff relief first, then have an election. So says Jagmeet Singh. Whereas in Doug Ford's world, we got to have an election before we can start dealing with tariffs. First things first. Isn't that a little bit ironic? I find it ironic. 1-833-668-2577. So my question for you today is this. Is the American tariff threat the most important issue facing the country right now? And if it is, should we not have a federal election until the tariffs have been dealt with? 1-833-668-2577. That's what pollsters call the ballot question. What's the ballot question? Is it getting rid of the Liberals, getting a new party in to run the country because they don't deserve to keep running the country a minute longer after 9 years? Change? Is the federal election about change? Or is it about responding to a possible trade war with the U.S.? 1-833-668-2577. Is it more important we have stability in Ottawa to keep the same government while this whole tariff mess is sorted out? Do you think it's a bad time to have an election now because of tariffs? Or do you disagree with that? Do you think now is the perfect time for an election because of tariffs? You see what I mean? It's ironic. That's what I think Jagmeet Singh is suggesting. If we go into an election right away after the House comes back in March, it means the government can't pass any new spending to support workers and businesses. So he may choose to delay the date of bringing down the government so as to support those people. Would that be the right call? What do you think? 1-833-668-2577. Phone lines lighting up. I love to see that. Stop here for a short break. We'll get right to your calls on the other side. I'm David Smith. This is Talk Back on Now You Know on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
David Smith here in for Rob Snow today. Thank you for joining us. Elections, tariffs and elections. That's the news today. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh now says he might continue to support the Liberal government in Parliament so it can pass new spending to support Canadians who might be impacted by U.S. tariffs. What do you think about that? He said he would bring down the government at the first opportunity. Now he's leaving the door open to maybe stretching that out a little bit more. 1-833-668-2577. Up first today is Jason from Kitchener. Hello, Jason. You are on the air.
David, how are you today?
I'm fine. What do you think about this?
I think it actually, I said this probably 2 weeks ago. If Mark Carney is elected a Liberal leader and eventually the Prime Minister, I think it's in his best interest and also the NDP's best interest to come to some kind of, again, a supply and confidence agreement, whether that's economic measures, whether that's expanding some of the pharmacare programs, to keep him around until October when the election is supposed to happen. That gives him a few options. You know, it allows him to show the country that he's able to handle the tariffs, and you know, because Mark Carney has I believe he is probably one of the smartest financial people in our country. You know, gives him the opportunity to right the ship financially for Canadians, but it also allows any measures that need to be delivered to Canadians, whether, again, it's economic relief measures or expanding some pharmacare programs. It allows him to show that he's willing to work with other parties for the good of the country. Now, I will say, on a different note for Doug Ford, you know, obviously living in Kitchener, Ontario, you know, we have an election coming up. It is ironic, and I don't believe anybody's questioned Mr. Ford on this, as to before the American election, he was actually, I remember him saying, oh, if Kamala Harris is elected, it's going to be a disaster. Well, I guess you get what you wish for now, you know, because he was supporting Mr. Trump, and he was rooting for Mr. Trump, and I guess its friends aren't necessarily always friends when you think they're friends. But I think it's in the best interest of Mark Carney, if he is elected, to appointed to the leader or nominated to or elected to the leadership, that they hold off and let's set the sail, kind of let's get smooth sailing going forward.
Yeah, but do you know, politically that would be in the interest of Mark Carney and the Liberal Party, but do you think that would be best for the country?
I do, because I really haven't heard Mr. Poilievre come out with too much, you know, he bashes the Liberal government. He's been bashing for the last 2 years, but that's what he's been doing. Where are his plans? What are his plans? How come he's not sitting down with the other leaders of the opposition and or the government to discuss retaliatory tariffs against the American government? And so, you know, I don't believe he has a plan. I believe his idea of plan is to reverse anything that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have put in place in the last 6 or 7 years. And in fact, it will be a detriment to the country. And I will preface this: I don't support the Liberals, NDP, Conservatives, or Green. I voted for all four of them. I don't carry a card for any particular party, but I vote based on what I think is best for our community, my province, and my country.
Okay, Jason, thank you for your call today. Thank you. Appreciate the thoughts. That's Jason in Kitchener. I will say this, you know, it's a common complaint about Pierre Poilievre. Well, he hasn't said what he would do. He hasn't put any ideas forward so far as responding to the tariff threat. Traditionally, the venue that an opposition leader would use to put forward their ideas on something like that is called the House of Commons. That's why we have a House of Commons. We elect people to go there to debate, discuss, pass legislation. Nobody's in the House of Commons right now because Justin Trudeau prorogued it to save his political party. That's not Pierre Poilievre's fault. That's Justin Trudeau's fault. just in my opinion. Paul in Kitchener, also from Kitchener. Paul, hello, Paul. How are you?
Hi there. Good. Well, I have to commend Jagmeet for making that decision because I think we need stability at this time. We don't need another election, and we certainly don't need the Ontario election at this time as well, too. What we need is unity. However, I think Jagmeet, his real reason for not calling the election is because about a year ago or less, the NDP were $3 million in debt. I don't think they've gotten themselves out of debt, and they can't afford an election right now. So I think it works out good for everybody. But, my concern, though, is why are we so laser focused on fighting this trade war or starting a trade war or fighting it, and then perhaps spending billions of dollars trying to prop up, the economy and so forth, when we could be right now spending those billions on our border security, on increasing the security of our borders? Because at the end of the day, what Trump said was secure your borders, stop the fentanyl, or I'm going to impose tariffs. So, it's a real lack of leadership as to why we haven't already done.
Okay, but let me jump in there, Paul. Let me jump in there. The government did come up with a plan, $1.6 billion over 6 years or so. They presented that plan to Trump. So they took action on what he had asked them for, and tariffs are still coming.
If I could interrupt, hold on. If I can interrupt for a million, for $1.6 billion, right, over 6 years. Right? So that's like $200 million a year. It obviously is not enough. So why would, and we're going to spend up even way more billions trying to prop up the economy. Why would we not be spending $1 billion or $2 billion right now? Stopping flights, stopping this, doing this. It obviously wasn't enough. And I don't think $200 million a year is enough for what he wants. And we should already be doing this anyway. Right? The things that he's asked us to do, to have a secure border, proper vetting, stopping flow of fentanyl coming from Canada and so forth. I mean, we know what's been happening in Quebec with all people coming back and forth, and there practically isn't a border there anyway. So he's not asking us to do something that's going to be detrimental to our country. And if we're going to spend billions of dollars just trying to prop up our economy, why not spend those billions of dollars to prop up our immigration system now?
Okay. So let's bring this back to the question of an election. The last election we had in this country was 4 years ago. It was 2021. It was all about the pandemic. Does the government in Ottawa, such as it is, really have a mandate to spend billions of dollars now on this totally new challenge before Canadians have had a chance to voice their concerns in the form of an election?
Well, the Canadians aren't going to have a choice anyway, right? Jagmeet's already saying they would bring back Parliament to sign a spending bill. So if you're going to spend money, spend it up front, spend it up in a positive way, right? That you're going to get some benefit out of, other than trying to prop up your economy that's failing because you're in a trade war.
All right,
that's how I look at it.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I appreciate the call today. Thank you. That's Paul in Kitchener. Don't totally agree with everything Paul said, but I appreciate the thoughts. 1-833-668-2577. Lines are available. Give me a call. Again, the central question really is this. Jagmeet Singh seems ready to keep the Liberal Party in power in Ottawa because circumstances have changed, you could say, since the election in the U.S. Now that there's a new problem facing Canadians in Donald Trump, now's not the time for an election. He was totally ready for an election a month ago, but now he's not. What do you think of that? 1-833-668-2577. I'm David Smith. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, David Smith here and for Rob today. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh now says he might continue to support the Liberal government in the House of Commons so it can pass new spending to support Canadians impacted by U.S. tariffs. Instead of triggering an election right away, he might give the Liberals more time to govern because of all of this uncertainty around the tariff threat. What do you think about that? Is now a bad time to have a federal election because of these tariffs? Time for a call before the bottom of the hour. Here up next, it's Darian in Alberta. Hi there.
Oh, hey, David, how are you?
I'm doing well. What do you think about this one?
Well, I think that where we've gone so wrong in all of this is we are not putting Canadians and the country first, and we have got to remind ourselves what Jagmeet has done, and trying to sort of put a wolf in sheep's clothing as far as this whole protecting Canadians thing. It's just another angle to keep him and the Liberals in charge. So, and to your point, David, blaming it on Pierre, we're sitting in a time where we've got Trump in power and we have no government sitting. The fact that our leaders had a Zoom call to discuss upcoming tariffs is unbelievable, and it's a sad state for Canadians and our country. So I think at this point on, we have to remember, let Canadians decide. Let Canadians go to the poll, because we are not in good shape no matter what angle you look at it. And let Canadians decide who we want to take us through this next part, because what the Liberals and the NDP have done to date has absolutely turned this country upside down.
Okay, very well said. And just in time for our break here at the bottom of the hour. Thank you very much, Darian. I appreciate the call today.
Thank you, David.
Oops, sorry about that. Thank you as well. All right, we're coming up to the bottom of the hour. Don't have time to bring somebody else on, but everybody who's on the line, we will get to you right after the bottom of the hour news. Again, the question, is it a bad time to have a federal election because of Donald Trump and the tariffs? That's the tune that's now being sung by Mr. Singh. He says, before we have an election, if there's a plan to spend money to support Canadians who might be out of work because of tariffs, that should happen first, and he'll support the Liberals as they do that. What do you think?
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
David Smith here in for Rob Snow today. Phone lines open, 1-833-668-2577, talking about elections and tariffs. Up until yesterday, I was sure that we were having an election in May. I'm not so sure anymore, because Jagmeet Singh says when the House of Commons returns, he may not vote to defeat the government right away, because he might want to see some kind of spending package passed first, spending on programs to help Canadians who eventually may be out of work because of tariffs. So he now says he might be okay giving the Liberals more time in government, delaying that federal election. What do you think about that? Back to the phones. It's Brian in Calgary up next. Hello, Brian. You're on the air.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm here in Alberta, and, Mark Carney was originally from Alberta, and he's not going to be the man to be able to fight these tariffs, because just recently here they had a British journalist was recently asked about Mark Carney and the Bank of England governor. The journalist said that Mark Carney was a disaster as a governor of the Bank of England, and that is why he was fired from that post, and not because of Brexit. And I think Jagmeet Singh is wrong. We need an election. I believe Mr. Ford, the premier in Alberta, or not Alberta, in Ontario there, he's right on. We need the election. We need to have a strong mandate to go forward. And that's the best I can do right now, as from what I see from my point of view.
Yeah, okay. So this idea that Mark Carney is somehow way better to deal with Donald Trump than Mr. Poilievre, you're not seeing it that way. You don't think there's any evidence there?
All you have to do, sir, is just talk to some officials in England about how good of a governor of the Bank of England he was. He was a disaster. The people absolutely hated him.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't confirm that or not. It is a different country, but he did step down as the governor of the Bank of England. He did step down. So
they got him out of there. He was vastly unpopular. He just wasn't able to do the job. That was it.
Okay, Brian, thank you for the call today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's Brian in Calgary. Let's go next to Kyle in Listowel. Hello, Kyle.
How's it going? Are you still going golfing?
I am still going golfing, yes.
I didn't want to offend you. I think you should go and just have fun.
Yes, the last time you were on the air, you joked that I was a traitor for going on an American vacation. I did take it as a joke. It made me laugh. That's okay.
All right. I just want to make sure. Hey, I think, this is what I think. Where has the government been for the last 9 years for Canadians? Where has Jagmeet Singh been for the last 9 years of Canadians? That caller that was not the one that was on, but before me, she made a really good point. Like, you putting Canadians first, and now all of a sudden, now you're for Canadians? You're now want to now put money towards Canada? Maybe if we didn't spend all this money throwing money outside of Canada, we would have enough money in the government of Canada to say, you know what, this is what's going to go on. And this is the money that we could save for those that are going to be out of work. Like, I'm not sure what the country's going to look like, but just in Ontario alone, Doug Ford did say 500,000 Ontarians are going to be out of a job. It might be a different number, but that's what I thought I heard was 500,000 Ontarians out of a job. So, you know what? We need a new government. This whole thing of saying, oh, I want to now wait. So they're not listening to Canadians. They're not listening for us to wanting an election. They're not listening to what we've been asking for the last 9 years. So yeah, get rid of these two guys. Vote somebody in, because it's a democratic society. We have the right to vote, and get somebody new. But I don't want Jagmeet Singh telling us that now he's going to wait for the numbers and all that stuff. So he hasn't been with us for Canadians for the last 9 years, and I'm not hopefully he's going to even listen to us now. So that's what I got to say, my friend.
Okay. Kyle, good rant. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate you weighing in. Kyle and Listowel. Yeah, and, to that point as well, if it were so urgent, if it really were so urgent, and if it were the most important thing to Mr. Singh, then why isn't he calling on Justin Trudeau to bring back the House of Commons? Right? He said, when the House of Commons is back, maybe I'll keep supporting the Liberal Party as long as they're spending money the way I want them to spend the money. But if it was so urgent, if it was worth delaying that election, how come the second half of that sentence from Mr. Singh wasn't, and we should be discussing this in the House of Commons today? So it's so urgent that we should delay an election, but not urgent enough that we should bring back the House of Commons. Okay. I can't square that circle. Maybe you see it differently than that. That's fine. Let's go back to the phones. Ugo in Calgary. Hi there.
Yes, good afternoon. I look at Mr. Singh, and right from the start when he joined forces with Trudeau and the Liberals, he's been back riding on the back of the coattails of all Canadians. He hasn't done a thing for himself, as I see it. He wish-washes back and forth on the bandwagon, off the wagon, and I got to tell you though, he's one damn smart politician, because he's just sitting there laughing at us. We've finally got an election, hopefully coming up soon. But he's got his pension. He don't care. If you look at the scenario as it sits right now, we should never have had this prorogue of Parliament. The Governor General should never have agreed to it, and it should have gone on. We should have had an election. We needed an election a long time ago. And I'm just hoping that the people will think about this and say, yes, we need a new leadership. And as far as Trudeau and the tariffs are concerned, I'm not so sure that it's the leader himself. If the Conservatives vote and come into Parliament, and they should have a majority vote, that's more important, I think, in dealing with Trump than having some 50-50-ish elected Parliament going against him, because he'll say, it's a wish-wash, I can do what I want still. But with a lot of big power facing him, he's got to make some honest and serious decisions.
Right, okay, so you're saying as soon as the House comes back, Jagmeet Singh should honor his earlier promise to bring down the government and let Canadians decide in a federal election as soon as possible.
Well, I think that Mr. Singh talks out of both sides of his face. And it's really, really hard to pin him down. He's tried to he's pinned himself down a few times, and then he walks away from it. So I just can't see Mr. Singh following through on anything.
Yeah, you can't trust him.
We do need, even though we do need an election, and we need it now. And if you look at the past histories of elections, once the election gets into Ontario, all the West might as well just sit on their hands or go home because our vote doesn't count. But I'll tell you something, this year, our vote's going to count.
Okay. Hugo, thank you very much for the call today. Appreciate it. That's Hugo in Calgary. All right, we have to stop. Callers on the line. Hang on. I'll get to you right after the break. Great discussion so far. Glad you are interested in this topic as much as I am. 1-833-668-2577. I'm David Smith, in for Rob today. We're back right after this on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
David Smith here, in for Rob today. Talking about elections and tariffs and elections and Donald Trump, and also Jagmeet Singh. Mr. Singh yesterday was asked if he would support the Liberal government after the House of Commons returns at the end of March if they table some kind of major spending package like we saw during the pandemic, CERB and things like that, to support Canadians who may end up losing their jobs because of a tariff trade war with the United States. He didn't say no when he was asked about it. So I am inferring that he's open to it. He didn't say no. So if we play this scenario out a little bit in our heads, House of Commons returns, Liberals table a spending bill, NDP supports them. Suddenly, we don't know when that federal election is going to happen. What is the timeline for designing a massive multi-billion-dollar program and passing it through the House of Commons? I don't know. It's possible they could finish out the spring sitting of the House of Commons. Could be months. Maybe we don't even have a federal election until October. I don't know. It's all uncertain again. So I'm just looking for your thoughts on that. If I were to say, maybe it's better we don't have a federal election this spring so we have some stability in Ottawa while this tariff negotiation is taking place. Would you agree with that? How are you looking at this? 1-833-668-2577. Michael in Calgary up next. Michael, you're on the air. Michael?
Yeah, how you doing?
Hi, I hear you now. Yeah, go ahead. What's your take on this?
Well, first of all, I hate to be rude, but Mr. Singh, he's a coward and always been a coward. And what it is now that he thought maybe he would get like a big boost in the polls after Trudeau stepped down, but he realized that he lost points in the polls supposedly. So he knows he's nothing, he's just he's a puppet, and he will not call for an election. We'll have an election in October because of him. He's, like I said, it's all about him, and he'll ride on the coattails of the Liberals. And Mark Carney, that guy scares me. He's just another Trudeau. So, we're going to get nowheres in this country until we have an election, and I think it'll be October.
But you're not happy about it. Sounds like you're unhappy with that, Michael.
I'm very unhappy with it because, like I said, he said he had two interviews where he said 100%, I will call for a non-confidence vote, and all of a sudden he comes out and says, "Oh, well, we might need to make this a package for Canadians," but the tariffs haven't even started yet, and you know how Trump is. He could change his mind, by the first. So, to me, whatever, Singh will never get anywhere as a leader. In fact, the NDP should drop him because he's done nothing for the party. In fact, like I said, they're low in the polls, and yeah.
All right. Yeah. Very interesting thoughts today, Michael. Thank you for that.
Okay, thanks, David.
Appreciate you weighing in. That's Michael in Calgary. Yeah, to Michael's point on the unpredictability of Donald Trump, let me just throw this wrench into the works as well. Is it possible Trump may flip-flop on tariffs? Well, anything's possible. I can tell you what Donald Trump flip-flopped on today, and that was the freeze of federal grants, foreign aid, and things like that. Donald Trump had issued an executive order to freeze all of that spending, and it caused a lot of chaos. Money wasn't flowing to certain places. A lot of people impacted. Today, they canceled it. They canceled the freeze. I was so sure earlier this week this was the right idea. Now they've canceled it. So you never know with that guy. Only he knows what he's going to do next. 1-833-668-2577. We'll stop here. Short break. We'll be back on the phones when we return. I am David Smith. In for Rob Snow. This is Talk Back. Lines available. 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
1-833-668-2577. The headline reads, Singh open to talking Trump tariff supports, but still plans liberal topple. Another headline, CBC, Singh suggests NDP could help liberals pass Trump tariff relief. That's what he said yesterday. I would like to remind you at this juncture what he said December 20th, a little more than a month ago. He said in an open letter to all Canadians, he said, quote, the Liberals don't deserve another chance. That's why the NDP will vote to bring this government down and give Canadians a chance to vote for a government who will work for them. No matter who is leading the Liberal Party, this government's time is up. We will put forward a clear motion of non-confidence in the next sitting of the House of Commons. End quote. So again, December 20th, Liberals don't deserve another chance. January 29th, NDP could help Liberals pass Trump tariff relief. I'm just trying to make sense of it. Trying to get your take on, should we put off this whole idea of having a federal election given how things have developed with this Trump threat? What do you think? Back to the phones. It's Donna in Halifax. Hi, Donna.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call. Mike from Calgary, if you're still listening, I agree with what you said. You stole my thunder, everything I was going to say. I totally agree with you. Anyway, something that I'll add is Pierre Poilievre sent a letter to Parliament to discuss getting everyone, to get Parliament back. If the NDP were serious about getting rid of the Liberals, why didn't they write a letter too? And they would have had the majority of the parties writing the letter to get Parliament back in. Pierre wanted Parliament back in to discuss the tariff problems. Everybody keeps saying Pierre Poilievre has done nothing, but he has. And that's just my opinion. But another thing, Carney, I wouldn't vote for him. I've been reading up on different things about him over the past. In the past 2 or 3 years, he's been the one that's been pulling the strings there with getting Trudeau to do this, and that. And as far as if the Liberals, God forbid, if this happens, I personally think that there will be no tariffs. Wait and see. I hope I'm right because I got a $100 bet with my sister. But anyway, if there isn't, and the Liberals have to go through putting out money, look what happened when they did the COVID. There were 600 or 800 CRA, if they're the ones that are giving out the money. Yeah. They were charged with taking money themselves and lost their jobs. Dead people got sent money. Students were given money. It was a complete disaster. And a lot of people, companies, big companies, and everybody got money that they shouldn't have. However, that's another story. Anyway, so Mike from Calgary, I agree 100% with what you said.
Okay.
You're on the same page as me.
Okay, Donna.
We have a great conversation.
Thank you very much, Donna.
Thank you very much for taking my call.
Absolutely. Donna in Halifax. Yeah, great discussion today. And again, not everybody who is called, if you're just tuning in, not everybody who is called sees it that way. Some people called earlier in the hour who think that it would be best to have the same government in Ottawa, continuity for continuity's sake, I suppose. I don't know. I don't really see the value in that. I think a new government federally, it's a different case when we talk about Doug Ford in Ontario. That's a whole side angle to this whole freak show. Federally, a new government with a new mandate, I would prefer to deal with the Trump government simply because then they would be on more equal footing. Because if it is the case that, and there will be an election, fixed date, no matter what, the latest it can be is October 2025. You don't think that Donald Trump knows that? Is he going to seriously engage with a government that he knows is likely on its way out the door? That's a different way of looking at it. That's how I'm looking at it. Coming up to the top of the hour, everybody hang on the line. We will get right back to the phones after the very latest breaking news. It's Talk Back, 1-833-668-2577. I'm David Smith. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Yes, hour number 2 of Talk Back on News Radio. I'm David Smith. In for Rob Snow today. Here's the situation. Jagmeet Singh said something yesterday that's making all kinds of headlines because it may radically alter the timeline of the next federal election. I know. We've been talking about this election for a year now, and it just keeps bouncing around. So, to reset everything for people who are just tuning in, earlier this week there were reports the Trudeau government is considering a multi-billion-dollar program, like we saw during the pandemic, CERB, things like that, to support Canadians who, over the course of the next few months, may end up out of work if we have a trade war with the USA. Jagmeet Singh was asked about this yesterday, and he didn't say no when the reporter pressed him on if he would continue to support the Liberal government when the House of Commons returns. Let's play the clip again.
If Trump follows through on his plan with tariffs, would you keep the Liberals in power and allow for the passage of a work relief program before supporting a non-confidence motion?
I'll just start off by the fact that I've spoken with a lot of workers who are deeply worried about what the Trump tariffs might mean. They say, sometimes I lay awake at night saying, if that tariff goes through, do I lose my job? And what's going to happen to my kids? What's going to happen to my family? When we think about the analysis that's out there, if those Trump tariffs come in place, there are hundreds and thousands of Canadian jobs at risk. Think about what that means for those workers, hundreds of thousands of workers, for their families, for those communities. This could be devastating for our country. So we do need to have a plan in place to support those that are impacted, those businesses, those workers, most importantly. I have not had any conversations with other opposition leaders. I think we need to come together to have a discussion about what is the best way forward. I've not had any discussions with the government related to this. If there is any desire to move forward, the government should call us together, like we did during COVID, and discuss a plan that supports workers.
So he didn't say no. Up until yesterday, everybody believed that the government would fall more or less as soon as they get back from prorogation. Now it sounds like Jagmeet Singh's very much open to supporting them for at least one more piece of legislation. That's a major change. Really curious to hear what you think about that. 1-833-668-2577. It sounds simple enough on the surface, but I do have to wonder, how would that actually play out? If the House comes back in March and the NDP say we'll support the Liberals so long as they're working on relief measures for people impacted by tariffs, how long does that take? How long would he keep supporting the current Liberal government and whomever is leading it? Because I would remind you, it won't be Justin Trudeau. The Liberals will have a new leader as of March 9th. These are strange times in Canadian politics, my friends. Let's say the Liberals choose Mark Carney as their leader. The House comes back in March. Mark Carney is the Prime Minister who nobody voted for. Prime Minister on a technicality. Prime Minister by default. If Singh is open to supporting the government again, how long is Mark Carney the prime minister for before the next election? Is that really fair to Canadians? Is that fair to Canada's democracy to keep on going like this? I would remind you all. The last federal election that we had was in 2021. It was a snap election because Justin Trudeau said he needed a mandate to finish the fight against COVID-19. Remember that? The COVID-19 election. That was the last mandate the Liberal Party received from Canadian voters. It seems like ancient history now, doesn't it? Would you accept a federal government under Prime Minister Mark Carney or Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland with the support of the NDP spending billions of dollars before we have a federal election? That's a big ask for me. That's a stretch. I understand that scenario is possible because of the rules of Parliament, but this scenario the NDP leader seems to be musing about, it's pushing the bounds of what's acceptable, in my opinion. Parliamentary procedure run amok. And the more I think about it, the more I play that scenario out in my head, the more farcical it all seems. But that's just my opinion. Just one man's opinion. That's why we do Talk Back. I want to hear from you. Back to the phones. Thank you for waiting while I got that all out there. Tom in Cambridge, go ahead.
How are you doing, Dave? Well, I think there's a couple things that we need to sort of put into perspective here as well, is that we look what's going on in Ontario right now, and can we, as Canadians, can we afford an election, another election on top of an election? What's that going to cost taxpayers? Everybody seemed to have forgotten what the Bloc is going to do in this as well, even though the Bloc came out and said they would not support a Trudeau government. So, in retrospect here, in hindsight being 20, I would stay with the previous government. I think it'd be fair to Canadians to go with the October election. And then there you are starting from anew, because it's not a Trudeau government. It's going to be a Liberal government under Chrystia Freeland or Mark Carney, whoever the Liberals are going to elect. And then it comes down to what are people actually going to do with the NDP now? Because the NDP, in all purpose, they've really got to rethink. First of all, do they want Jagmeet Singh as their leader? Their policies and what they really do represent for Canadians, at what they did at one time and what they do now, is totally contrary to what's going on now. And then I guess I'm saying, look at our political platforms. Then, we get caught in this thing about the face of a party and that. But in all hindsight, is like, if we want really change here, we've got to change the political format and the basis of having who's running for power for how long, and exactly when, elections. We should, if there's a mandate to have an election on the 20th, let's have an election on the 20th. And that's how I'm looking at it right now. It's I would not vote for Mr. Singh, but I do believe we should not be jumping off from one frying pan into another, not knowing how that's going to play out either.
So you think it would be better to wait? And even if it is Mark Carney, then he'll get to be the prime minister for, whatever it is, 6 months until October.
Exactly. Like, didn't John Turner did that when Brian Mulroney came in? There was an election, so then Brian Mulroney was elected after that. And that was a sort of a forced election, and John Turner's hand was sort of forced to call the election. But, it's like it's jumping from one relationship to another and not really knowing the other person that too well again. And then when the novelty wears off and the honeymoon phase is over, we're back to square one again. So then we're going to wait another 4 years to do something again and repeat the Freudian thing we do is keep electing or re-electing the same political parties and hoping and praying that what they say and what they promise, they will actually stand behind. Meanwhile, we as Canadian citizens who are not part of the 1% are left holding the bag.
Okay, Tom, that's my time for you today, but we have to go for the break. Interesting thoughts, thoughtful today. Thank you, Tom. Good to hear from you. All right, Mike and Airdrie, I see you there. Hang on. We'll take a short break. 3 lines available now, 1-833-668-2577. Give me a call. Get on the air to have your say. I'm David Smith. It's Talk Back. Now you know, on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Elections and tariffs. tariffs and elections. That's the news today. David Smith here in for Rob Snow. Let's get back to the phones on the idea of delaying the next federal election until such times as relief measures for Canadians who might be out of work due to tariffs can be passed. That's what the NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is musing about. Supporting the Liberals in the House of Commons once again when the House is back in March. What do you think about that? Mike in Airdrie. Thanks for waiting, Mike. You're on the air.
Hey, David. How you doing? First-time caller to the show.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks so much, Mike. What's your opinion on this?
Well, I think we're in kind of a political nowhere land right now. We don't know what the tariffs are going to be introduced, when and if, and we don't know what's going on with our political parties right now. We don't hear a lot from Poilievre. Jagmeet Singh is waffling on a whole bunch of things. We don't know who the leader of the Liberal Party is. And I think we wait until we find out what is happening with the tariffs. And part of those tariffs are having to do with some border issues. And it's a two-way street. There's fentanyl and guns coming into this country. And, there's a lot of fentanyl and whatever in the States. But it's a self-induced problem in the States with opioids and fentanyl. And it's something that the States has to resolve themselves. So if Trump has a problem with our border, I suggest he send some troops to their side of the border and build a wall up here. But at the same time, we do have, lack of funding for our border security too. But in regards to the political parties, I think we take a wait-and-see attitude and see what happens after any kind of tariffs are introduced.
Right. So are you saying that you're okay then if the NDP goes back to supporting the Liberal government in the House of Commons, whomever the new leader would be? Because that's what Singh is suggesting. They may go back, they may come up with some kind of new supply and confidence agreement, and the Liberals get to go on running the country. Would you be okay with that?
No. I mean, we have a party that's proven that they can't run the country efficiently, and they're again, Jagmeet Singh is waffling on what he's doing.
Okay, so if the snap election does get called and we have a federal election in May, for example, you would be fine with that?
I would be. I mean, once the tariffs if they are introduced, we will find out what each party is prepared to do about, resolving any kind of issues.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the thoughts today.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care. That's Mike in Airdrie. Different take on it as well. Up next, Emerson in Calgary. Emerson, hello. You're on the air.
First of all, I want to say thank you, David, for taking my call. Second of all, I would like to see you on air every Wednesday. Hope Rob doesn't mind that change.
Okay.
But anyway, I think that this tariff thing is just a little gimmick that Trump is playing because number one, he doesn't like Trudeau. Number two, he doesn't like Freeland. So he's twisting these people 30 ways to Sunday like a little pretzel. I don't think anything's ever going to come on it, but he's enjoying the fact that it's torturing the hell out of everybody. And he's just going to eventually say, well, we're going to do a further study before we do anything. If tariffs do show up, I think they'll show up after our election, not before. But I don't think it'll ever happen because of the relationship. I think eventually people will come to their senses. As far as Jagmeet Singh goes, if he does not support a non-confidence motion that comes up after a leader is elected for the Liberals, his party will be decimated in the next election because the man is a fraud. He's a con job. He knows how to lie, and he thinks everybody's stupid but him. I really feel sorry for the NDP caucus because they're stuck with this moron. And really, I hope he does it. I hope he does decide to get married again to the Liberal Party because he'll wipe the party out because people are sick and tired of idiots who go back and forth up and down like a toilet seat. So I think he will pull the plug because I don't think it'll be exactly his decision. I think the party will put a lot of pressure on him to pull the plug because they'll just be wiped right out. They won't even know what hit them on election night. So I just want to say that we all need to remain calm in Canada, because really, at the end of the day, we need to take a deep breath. There's the politics that are coming from the United States. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to get us off kilter. But you know what? If we remain calm and we don't show Trump that we're falling into his little plan, things will calm down. We all need to calm down. Everybody's in an uproar. Everyone's saying, I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my job. That's what he wants to hear, because then we make irrational decisions. We need to remain calm. So I'm predicting by May we'll have an election. I think Singh is he's a man, you can't be trusted. I mean, I can't even imagine what's going to happen to that man after the election. Like most of your callers have said, February 25th is D-Day for him. He gets his pension. And you know what? He really does. He never did care about Canada, and he's certainly not going to care about Canada after the 25th of February. He'll have his little pension of $69,000 a year for the rest of his life. Too bad, so sad. We're stuck with that moron on the payroll.
Okay.
That's all I have to say. Keep doing a good job. Love you for taking my call. Thank you to the call taker that took my call. She sounds amazing. Keep her too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emerson. You've had your say. Okay. That's Emerson's take. But again, on the idea of, maybe we are playing into Trump's hands. Maybe I am guilty today of playing into Trump's hands by bringing all of this up. Those are the breaks. This is the news. This is the news, whether you like it or not. And I'm get Trumped out too. But whether you like it or not, he's the most powerful man in the world. And what he says is news. And all of this fear and uncertainty, to Emerson's point, keep calm. I would feel calmer if we had, to borrow a phrase, a strong, stable, majority conservative government. Because then at least the specter of changing governments would be out of the way. That's why I think get it over with sooner rather than later. Some people see it the opposite way. It's fascinating. We have to stop here. I'll get to more calls after the break. I'm David Smith, in for Rob Snow today. This is Now You Know. Talkback News Radio.
Thing on your mind you want everyone to know.
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
David Smith here, in for Rob Snow today. Thank you for joining us. Up next on the phones, it's Wade in Sylvan Lake. Wade, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says he might go back to supporting the Liberals in the House of Commons. What do you think about that?
Well, I wouldn't doubt it. The guy is such a liar. It's amazing. I'm pretty opinionated and I speak my mind, but I'm almost speechless.
At a loss for words. Yeah.
Well, I mean, could we make our country and our government and our political climate any more complicated and laughing stock as it currently is? We got the Liberals running around like their hair's on fire, and Jagmeet Singh with the NDP doing what he's doing, and then Doug Ford wants to call an election. And why don't we complicate it just a little bit more? I don't know. Is there anything else we could do to make it, so everybody's totally confused?
That's kind of what I thought when I saw this story, Wade. Like, is there anything else to create more chaos that we could possibly throw into the mix? So you say no. You say, Mr. Singh, you had better vote. Stay true to your word. Again, it was just over a month ago when he said, I will vote to bring down this government. You think he should do that?
Oh, absolutely. I agree with everything Emerson said. And in a way, I hope that he does back up the Liberals, because that will do what probably needs to be done is, first of all, the Liberals have lost any credibility they might have ever had to run a country. So if Jagmeet Singh stands up with the Liberals, he will have destroyed any credibility the NDP ever had to run this country.
Right.
And the only people left standing will be Pierre Poilievre with the Conservatives And I appreciate the fact that he isn't jumping into that mix like everybody else.
All right.
Because like Emerson said.
Yep, we're right up against it. I've got you, Wade. Thank you. Appreciate the call. We're back after this.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
David Smith here in for Rob today. Thank you for joining us. So let's say the new Liberal leader is Mark Carney. Let's just pretend. So Mark Carney, he's got the credentials, he's got the resume, but as a politician, he's untested, he's unproven, he's unelected, doesn't have a seat in the House of Commons. Is Jagmeet Singh really going to support him running the country, spending billions of dollars before we have a federal election? Jagmeet Singh suggested that he is in fact ready to do that yesterday. He said if there's spending on the table that would create a relief program that would help Canadians who might lose their jobs because of American tariffs, then he would not bring down the government on that confidence motion. So that puts the timing of the federal election back up in the air, if you ask me. Curious to hear what you have to say about that. Back to the phones at 1-833-668-2577. It's Rob in Cambridge. Hi, Rob.
Hello there. Afternoon, Dave. I'm currently kind of amazed how many people think this tariff thing is a hoax. Hey, when President Trump was in the term before, he kept going at Prime Minister Trudeau about the Oshawa GM plant and saying it belonged over there. Even though it's been here for over 110 years, he kept saying it. So he is serious on doing it. And if he can enrich his company or his country by going after the needed minerals and resources, he's not going to hesitate because it'll look better for him. Now, as for Jagmeet Singh, I know it looks different, but you have to put in perspective. A few months ago when he said that, these problems we are having today weren't even really considered and even talked about. The main thing, people were pissed off with Trudeau. They wanted him out, and he said, okay, this is time. So I kind of agree if he rethinks it, because it's not just going to impact the automotive. It's going to impact other industries, from transportation to engineering. People could be losing homes, could be leaving businesses. It's a big threat. So I appreciate when a guy rethinks, like no matter who it is, or you disagree, he rethinks and looks at it. And they keep going on about this Jagmeet Singh's pension. Like, kind of getting off this a bit, I've been seeing news ads on TV showing the pension that Poilievre was able to get at 31. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
Yeah, no, he's been, you only have to be an MP for 6 years. He was elected in his early 20s. So, yeah.
So that's kind of my thought, too, is with that. So you got to think of two. So I admire if he does go ahead and support it, and let's see what they can do.
So you're seeing this, Rob. Events have changed the situation.
Yep. Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for the call, Rob. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's Rob in Cambridge. Well, let's go next to Joe in Kitchener. Hello, Joe.
Hi. I tend to side with Emerson, your previous caller, on his thoughts. I think that Jagmeet Singh is a flake. Yes, of course he's a moron, but that's beside the point. More pertinent label is flake. He flakes out every time he says something and doesn't follow through with it. And he's going to further alienate his own base, which may, in effect, leave it down to a two-party race, three-party if you include the Greens. And my personal prediction is that the Greens are going to come out with more seats than they ever had before. This could be historic for the Greens because the NDP are going to be so disenfranchised with Jagmeet, the wonderful making decisions for the party that will inevitably put them in the dust in the rearview mirror. So this actually could work out to eliminate the NDP for a while or reduce them to like non-party status, because people are just so fed up with this clown and his waffling and the fact that he's just a complete and total flake. So this could be a good thing, but it may have to wait till October for us to see the benefits of that.
Right, right. And, you know, in the interim, on the issue of dealing with Donald Trump and negotiating with his administration, do you think that having an election in October rather than in May, do you think that's a big deal? Do you think that's going to impact our position as we try to negotiate with Trump, or what?
I think that the people are losing sight of the most important thing right in front of us, which is Trudeau cannot be at the table with Trump. I'd rather see a grade 5 student in there rather than Trudeau negotiating with Trump. It just can't happen. So if there's anything positive to take apart from this, is that Mark Carney is far more equipped to deal with negotiations at such a high level than Trudeau is. Trudeau's a clown. He's a circus clown and a drama teacher, and he was never fit to deal with the likes of Trump. And he knows it. Trump knows it.
Yeah,
that's why he picks on Trudeau and he picks on Canada.
Well, Trudeau is, as of March 9th, he's gone. So
the important thing is that he is out of the picture, and whoever steps in to take his place can only do a better job than he could.
All right. So, thanks for the call, Joe. Appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks.
Yeah, fool me once, right? Fool me twice. Jagmeet Singh, quote unquote, ripped up his deal with the Liberals, the supply and confidence agreement, the formal one, voted to keep the government in power 8 times after he did that, wrote a letter to all Canadians saying that 8th time was the last time, and regardless of who's leading the Liberal Party, he will vote to defeat it at the next opportunity. Yesterday, he comes out and says, maybe not. Check back in with me later. Fool me once. I'm David Smith. This is Talk Back on News Radio. We'll get back to the phones after a short break. 1-833-668-2577 if you want to weigh in on this topic. I'd love to hear from you. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
David Smith here in for Rob today. Is now a bad time to have a federal election because of this tariff threat from Donald Trump? 1-833-668-2577. Ironically enough, here in the province of Ontario, we are now in an election campaign. Premier Doug Ford called a snap election yesterday because he says Ontario must have an election so the government has a mandate to respond to the tariffs. The tariff threat is so important for Doug Ford that it trumps all of the other issues voters are facing. Healthcare, doctor shortage, unaffordable housing, gridlock, public transit, whatever. All of those things are secondary. They're on the back burner. Ford says he needs a new mandate on the tariffs specifically. I see 2 very different narratives here because Jagmeet Singh now says he's open to, hasn't committed to anything, but he's open to continuing to support the Liberals in the House of Commons once it's back in March, which might mean pushing off the next federal election until October. Very different narratives. I think that's interesting. That's why I want to hear your opinions. 1-833-668-2577. Giovanni has called from Calgary today. Hi.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, perfect. Just touching on something you mentioned there, but also going back to what you've been talking about the last 15 minutes or so. I've been here about 20 years, and I'm still learning about Canadian politics. Back in the 80s in the UK, there were a few politicians who weren't happy with their parties, and they left their parties, and they created a brand new political party called the SDLP. Now, ultimately, it was not successful and it disbanded. But something I've not heard in any media in Canada at all now, with everything that's going on, is the idea of some Liberals whoever becomes leader of the party are carrying so much negative baggage. They may become leader of their party, but there's no way they'll ever get in power, get into the position of prime minister. Has it been posited, or is it possible, because I don't understand the detailed mechanics of Canadian federal politics, that anybody who's unhappy with the Liberal Party or even with Mr. Singh's party, they could leave and create a brand new political party that doesn't have to be on either side of the house, either wing, but a new sort of centrist party that gets rid of all the baggage and start from scratch with brand new ideas that actually represent the people. Is this something that is a real possibility in federal Canadian politics? Because I haven't heard anybody mention this anywhere in the media. This is a possible idea.
Yeah, it's a good question. So it is possible. It's allowed. Definitely, you could form members of a caucus could all get together and form a new political party. Do I think it's likely? Is it in the realm of possibility? No. Canadian politics just doesn't have a history of people doing that. We have these three parties, and we've had them for a very long time. Liberals, NDP, Conservatives. The Conservative Party was kind of two factions, and then they merged. We had the old PCs and the Reform Party. But based on the landscape today, the idea that there would be a new center-left party, not the Liberals or the NDP, because you already have two parties on the left side of the political spectrum, to split off and form a third, the vote split there becomes pretty untenable. Just my own political analysis.
Yeah, I understand that picture. I'm not saying, I'm not saying anybody should, but I'm just wondering, was it possible? Because I think what would be a negative thing is if we ended up like the American system, where you've basically got two parties facing each other, because that most of the time doesn't actually represent anybody apart from your further left or your further right. There's nothing in the middle for those of us who are average people, which I think I'd probably say is most Canadians.
Yeah, and
it's a shame not to be represented.
No, I agree with you on that. I don't think a two-party system is any good. A further complicating factor, since you're asking about Canadian politics, is just population distribution in this country compared to the UK, where it's much more evenly distributed. Like, the city of Toronto has more seats in the House of Commons than the entire province of Alberta.
Yeah.
So regional politics plays way more of a role in our federal government makeup than it would in the UK, simply because you have to cater to Ontario and to the GTA, because that's where, I think it's up to about 6 million of 40 million people live in one urban area.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, okay, well, listen, it was just a comment, just an idea, because I haven't seen anybody or heard anybody talk about it, but thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoyed the chat. Okay. Appreciate it. Call back anytime. Thanks. Giovanni. We'll stop here, and then Keith, I see your call. We'll get to you on the other side. Might have time to take two on the other side if you want to call in now. 1-833-668-2577. I'm David Smith. This is Talk Back on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
David Smith here, filling in for Rob today. Final few minutes now of Talk Back. Again, just getting your opinions on what Jagmeet Singh had to say yesterday. He said he's not ruling out helping the Liberals pass a potential relief package for workers impacted by tariffs. But he also said, quote, "I've maintained my position that I'll be voting against the government at the earliest opportunity," end quote. Which is impossible, right? That's not possible. Those two things are mutually exclusive. I don't understand what that means. I'd like a reporter to ask him to clarify that. Because a relief package would be a confidence vote, so if you support that, you are necessarily not defeating the government at the earliest opportunity. If somebody can explain that to me in a different way, I'm open to hearing it. But as far as I'm concerned, he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. Time for another call before the end of the hour. It's Keith in Ottawa. Hi, Keith. What's your take
Hi,
here?
how are you doing?
I'm good. What do you think?
Well, the New Democratic Party, that name right now is an oxymoron. Like a year and a half ago, most Canadians with a brain wanted Trudeau out of there. And Singh has kept them in. Originally, it's a minority government, right? It wasn't supposed to invariably expected to go full term. And he's just kept Trudeau around for 2 years past his shelf life. So definitely I want an election right away.
So this idea that it would be better not to have an election so that there's some continuity with the federal government as they negotiate with Donald Trump, you're not really buying into that?
No, not at all. And by the way, maybe you hadn't heard yet, but he rescinded. Remember they canceled all that foreign aid 2 days ago?
Yeah.
That was rescinded today.
Yeah, I did. I mentioned that earlier in the show.
Okay, I didn't hear that.
Yeah,
part.
before you tuned in. But yeah, there you go, right, Keith? But there you go. I mean, you don't know what he's going to do.
You don't know what he's going to do. And we definitely need, like, Carney is more, he's influenced Trudeau for years. He's more left-wing than Trudeau. And Carney's wife, oh my goodness. Apparently she's been taking advantage of different funding as well.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that, but all I can tell you is, I don't see a whole lot of daylight between Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau. He's trying to convince people he's this outsider. He's an advisor to the government. Trudeau himself has said he's been trying to recruit Carney for years.
Everybody can talk tough, but you got to wait and see what comes down. Like everybody says, we'll do tariff per tariff. I don't think a lot of people realize when we say, "Oh, well, we're going to put tariffs on that," that means it's going to cost a lot more for them at the store.
Even more, yeah.
And the other thing about tariffs is, okay, like, yes, for an example, yesterday I bought some nice cherries. They were from Chile.
Yeah.
Okay? Let's say we put a tariff on American chilies, then those Chilean
cherries,
those ones don't have to be, they can raise their price because they're not competing against the American.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So
You've hit the
people
nail
don't
on the head.
realize all these nuances. There's other ways of doing this, and maybe we can have a discussion on that another time.
For another day, because we're coming to the end here. But thank you, Keith. Good to hear from you.
Bye.
And I'll leave you with this, just on Keith's point there. I got some new analysis in my inbox today from Oxford Economics. They did some economic modeling that shows a 25% U.S. tariff across the board, along with proportional retaliatory tariffs, would cause Canada's GDP to fall 2.5% by early 2026. And if you model that out over the course of 3 years, 1.1% in year one, 4.3% year two, 3.5% in year three. So if this goes on for 3 years, we're looking at a recession in Canada to the tune of 9% of our GDP. I don't even know what that would look like, but it would be horrific. Lots at stake, and our political leaders, as usual, not taking things very seriously. Just my opinion. Thank you for all those calls today. It's been great sitting in with you here on the show. I am David Smith. This is Now You Know. The latest breaking news is next on News Radio.